Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Lakers Collective. Happy to have you all here joining us on YouTube. The Lakers, get their butts kicked by the Oklahoma City Thunder last night. We got to talk about that. What does this tell us about the team moving forward? What kind of an impact can the pending return of LeBron James make? And is this an indictment of Austin Reaves and his slotting on this team? We're going to get into all that and a lot more. Fire off your questions and comments in the live chat. I'm Trevor Lane. Joining me, as always, Jason Timpf, Jovan Buha. Jovan, right before we came on, you said I don't know how you did it. You subjected yourself to rewatching the beginning of this game and said you somehow came out feeling worse. I don't love that, my friend.
Yeah, I rewatched the first half this morning. I couldn't really get past. I mean, they were down 70-38, so there wasn't much to take away in the third quarter. But I felt even worse about the defense. Like I felt there was probably 4 or 5 wide open threes that OKC missed, and several jumpers in the middle of the floor that were uncontested that they missed. So it felt like OKC had 7, 8, maybe even 9 wide open shots that you're obviously not going to make every wide open shot in a game, but it was like from a process perspective defensively, I felt it was pretty concerning. So they're down 70-38, and really with the way they played, it easily could have been like 80, 82 points for OKC. So a lot of work for LA on that end of the floor.
Yeah, plenty of work to be done. Jason, how much of this is the Lakers? How much of it is the Thunder are just awesome? And this was the Thunder missing like significant pieces. Jalen Williams, Lou Dort, Aaron Wiggins. They had a bunch of guys out. How much of that of the equation is the Thunder? How much of it is the Lakers?
Well, it's obviously both. I think anytime you see a result like that, it's always foolish to try to synthesize it down to one thing. That said, I am going to synthesize it down to one thing right now because that's what we do, right? So I tend to believe in trickle-down effects in the sense that, like, for instance, when you have a team like the Lakers that already have some limitations, if the thing you're great at also goes tail up like that, it's really difficult to then suddenly be locked in the details. So I thought everything pretty much fundamentally came down to the fact that the Lakers could not score in the half court. This is a Laker team that was a top 3 half-court offense in the NBA for basically the entirety of the start of the season, according to Cleaning the Glass. And they got just 0.78 points per half-court possession last night. Now, essentially the dynamic, it's weird. It's kind of like twisted compared to the way it is in the NFL. I actually look at like your stars as the foundation of every possession in the same way that line play is in the NFL. So if you have stars that are consistently breaking the defense down via scoring one-on-one, whether it's in post-ups or ISOs, scoring 2-on-2 in ball screens if they defend it with a traditional coverage, or if they're drawing multiple defenders and they're consistently getting the ball out without turning it over and setting up your role players with advantage opportunities, your role players will succeed. In the same way that if your offensive line is blowing the defensive line off the ball every time and opening up big holes and or giving your quarterback a ton of time to throw so that guys have more time to get open, your skill players are going to thrive. That's the dynamic that I see in basketball on offense. And the long and short of it is Luka, with exception of a handful of early possessions where he did some damage to Cason Wallace, who was just a little too small for him, it seemed, to start, although I thought Cason settled down in that matchup. Luka couldn't score one-on-one, and in the blitzes, he was turning the basketball over. And in general, throughout the game, I didn't think he was making the compromising pass as often as he needed to make. There's a lot of detail there that extends beyond Luka. It wasn't all Luka's fault. I thought both Ayton and Vando in particular and their roles were rolling too far to the basket rather than rolling short to make themselves available for a quick, easy pass so that they could play 4-on-3. There's definitely technical details, but ultimately Luka and Austin couldn't break down the defense. And so you can kind of imagine the trickle down from there. That leads to transition opportunities. That leads to a lack of belief in your ability to win the game when you're down double figures within the opening minutes. Like, I think there's a version of that game where Luka and Austin come out and they do an awesome job on offense and they're scoring consistently. And because of that, they're drawing extra defenders, making the passes out. Role players are scoring consistently. Then the team is like, hey, we got a shot to win this game. Sprint your ass back on defense. Make that extra rotation. apply that little bit extra resistance on the ball. And so like all those other issues were on display. Of course, the Lakers look unathletic last night. Of course, there are other roster limitations that we can get into. That's why they lost by 40. But to me, the foundational thing that caused everything to fall apart was Austin and Luka couldn't generate quality shots. And that's what the Lakers are supposed to be great at. And if you're not going to be great at that, I think it's ridiculous for them to be able to carry that, like to make up for that in other phases of the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Austin and Luka combined 11 for 32 from the field with 9 turnovers between them. Turnovers obviously a big factor anytime you're taking on OKC, who typically enjoy a field goal attempt discrepancy in their favor. Because they do force turnovers and they don't get up a lot of them. But I thought they really struggled with the physicality of the Thunder defense. Jason, I'm glad you brought up the mental side of it. Jovan, do you feel like the Lakers broke mentally in this one? And I guess big picture, what does this really tell us about this Lakers team?
Yeah, I thought this was a perfect storm of basically every weakness and concern I had about this group up to this point in the season played out. I thought defensively the communication was terrible, and there was possessions. It looked like some guys were in zone, some guys were in man. Guys are flashing into the middle of the floor undeterred. Guys aren't boxing out. OKC loves to put Isaiah Hartenstein in the dunker spot. No one's putting a body on him, and he didn't have as many offensive rebounds as he could have had, but he had several tip outs or near tip outs to teammates. It was just very basic stuff. Like, I am concerned about the defense, and I know we will touch on some bigger picture takeaways from the road trip overall. Like, I do think the defense has been a real problem up to this point in the season, and I think LeBron will help, but I don't think he's solving. Like, this has looked like a bad defense, and that might just be the ultimate limiting thing with this group. But offensively, they struggled with the ball pressure. Like Cason Wallace, to Jason's point, like I thought he did a really good job on Luka, and Luka admitted as much after the game. And like once I saw Lou Dort was going to be out for this game, my optimism grew a bit. Of like, Lou is one of the few guys who's got both the speed and the strength to hang with Luka at least a little bit. I think the Dortcher chamber stuff's a little overblown, but like he at least can, he's had some solid performances defensively against Luka. So I was like, no Lou Dort, no J-Dub. Those are two guys I think you can put on Luka and like at least body him on drives. If it's going to be Wallace and Caruso, like we saw last year, Luka's a little bit too big for those guys. But the Lakers didn't even really generate those opportunities to go into the post for Luka. Like they did a couple times, but not anything consistently. I think the big thing for me was they failed to execute on those 4-on-3, 3-on-2 situations. And one of the issues I've had early on with this group is like outside of Luka, Austin, and maybe Marcus, the rest of this group can struggle to process and see the floor quickly. And I thought you had several instances where OKC is loading up the paint, and then the ball gets swung to the corner, and they're able to close out and contest and kind of corral that player, and that player isn't able to rack the closeout or isn't able to make the next skip pass or rotation pass. And so the Lakers, I think, wasn't just an athleticism thing. I think it was a slow processing thing where OKC, they're frenetic and they're rotating all over, scrambling, swarming. The Lakers were like a step slow, I felt, mentally in this game. And I don't know how much of that was you just get stomped early and then that kind of carries over through the rest of the game, and how much of it's just honestly like a bit of a processing issue for some of their key role players. I think particularly DeAndre Aton and Rui Hachimura.
Yeah, it's certainly a concern when you talk about how guys are reacting off ball to a lot of the things that are happening. The Thunder will throw a lot at you. They are a well-oiled machine, and that's part of why they are so good. I mean, this team, they were on the second night of a back-to-back. They crushed the Warriors the night before. They crushed the Lakers the next night. They've only lost one game all season. I think it was by 2. I mean, there's a reason why the Thunder are at where they're at. I've seen a lot of Lakers fans arrive at the point of, well, that's it then. That's it. The Lakers can never get to the point where the Thunder are at. They can never contend with what we just saw. That's it. I'm out. And we tend to ride the emotional highs and lows throughout the season. It's the way we go. But Jason, is there any optimism here, or is it just the Lakers are never going to be able to get to that level, at least not this season? Like, is there a path to being able to compete with that team?
Well, I think it takes a certain amount of self-awareness to say that the Thunder are the best team in the league and that they certainly should be favored in any sort of matchup. I think that goes without saying. I think we went into the season, most people thinking it was Denver and OKC, and there's two teams in the NBA that have 13 or better net ratings, and it's Denver and OKC that are kicking everybody's butt. And I think like you have to acknowledge that as your starting point, right? The Lakers are a second tier team, which means they are an upset threat, not a favorite type of team. The question is, how do you upset a team like OKC? And that's where I keep coming back to what I was talking about at the top of the show. Like, how did Denver come close to upsetting OKC last year? It really came down to a couple of things. On the one hand, they could score. They found ways to score. And then the second piece of it was on the other end of the floor, via their scoring, they were able to control the pace of the game, keep OKC in the half court. Then they mixed up coverages, a lot of zone, a lot of digging into driving lanes, a lot of forcing OKC to be a processing team that had to knock down shots after multiple passing sequences in possessions in order to get great looks. And ultimately, it got into some close games late. And then the veteran Denver Nuggets team was able to pull out some close games early in the series and then obviously blow them out in game 6. And then you look at game 5 and game 4, and both of those games came down to the final possessions. A few shots go a few different ways, Denver could win, right? So you have to start looking at it from the standpoint of like, how do the Lakers upset OKC? And I think it starts with that dynamic we talked about at the top. Austin and Luka, and ultimately LeBron as part of this group, the three of them have to be able to score against OKC. Once they find the way to score and to break down their defense, from there, they can keep Oklahoma City out of transition. From keeping Oklahoma City out of transition, you can keep them in the half court. As you've been scoring, you now have your team believing in their chances to win the game. So they're going to punch higher than they normally would in their defensive capability compared to what they've been doing. Like, I think if you look at, I'm with Jovan, the defense looks like trash over the course of the road trip. But it's like, it's easy to look at it and go, okay, Atlanta, you lay an egg against a team down most of their guys and they're super athletic. You don't play hard, you get your butts kicked. They looked like crap on defense in the first half against Charlotte, but they locked in a little bit in that third quarter, and you're like, okay, yeah, they're capable of playing better defense than they had been. They played okay to start the game. The shots that Shea was hitting early in the game in the half court were tough contested shots over the top, a tough floater over Luka, a tough step back on the left side. It's the easy ones they started to give up after they lost control of the game, where the defense really started to get sloppy. So ultimately it comes down to, and this is what's unfortunate, they're not going to play until February. That's the next time they play. So they won't really have a measuring stick game against Oklahoma City for a long time. Mm-hmm. But when they get to that game, they need to approach that game with like, we got to score for starters, keep OKC in the half court, have a strong game plan and execute it, give ourselves a puncher's chance to win. That's the pathway. It's there, but ultimately, like we talked about with self-awareness, it is an upset shot. It's not a situation where the Lakers are on equal footing with them.
Yeah, kind of like I see in the conversation around, and we'll talk about him in a little bit, but the conversation around Austin Reaves. Austin Reaves has a 51-point game. It's but the playoffs. Oh, but he's not good at the playoffs. He can't disprove that until playoff time. There's nothing he can do about that rebuttal until playoff time. Everything now, the Lakers, if they play great next game against the Pelicans, it's going to be, it's the Pelicans. Who cares? They don't see the Thunder again until February. So not a lot of time maybe more time to grow between now and then, but not a lot of time to allay any of those fears. Now, Mamadou threw in a super chat, said, so we're pretty much screwed when we have to go up against any athletic team. We've seen teams with athleticism, particularly on the wings, give the Lakers problems in the past. Jovan, let's talk a little bit about the road trip and what we've learned. We saw a team with athleticism on the wing, despite missing players in the Atlanta Hawks, give the Lakers problems, kept them out of the paint. Now we see it again with OKC. Is that the big takeaway from the road trip, or where are you at right now with the Lakers sitting at 1-2 in the midst of their 5-game trip?
I think you're muted, Jovan.
Yeah.
My bad.
There we go.
There we go. I said I'd even throw in the Charlotte game, where outside of the third quarter, as Jason mentioned, I didn't think it was a particularly impressive showing. That like they tried hard for one quarter, and I mean it was a shootout in the first half. Then they played prevent basketball in the fourth. So I mean you could argue like they've had one good quarter out of the past 12. And that's a bit concerning. I think we knew that defense and athleticism were the two weaknesses with this roster. I think it's been exacerbated on this trip, and I do think LeBron and Gabe help in both regards. LeBron with both athleticism and defense, with Gabe more so just the defensive side. But there is a limitation here. And, something I've mentioned before, like going into the season, kind of the Lakers in like the 13 to 17 range defensively. And I thought that would ultimately determine their ceiling in terms of could they be a slightly above league average defense or would they be a slightly below league average defense? And I figured probably going to be top 5 in offense. And if you're top 5 in offense and like 13th in defense, you're a pretty good team with a shot to go to the conference finals. You're 17th or maybe even a little bit worse. That's where, you're maybe a first round exit or second round exit. Right now, to me, they're looking like a team that is going to be flirting with that like 20th spot defensively. And again, I think LeBron coming back, Gabe coming back can help and maybe nudge them up a few spots. But like the range might be pushed back to like 17 to 21 rather than 13 to 17. And I don't see how they address this, frankly, without making a trade. Like, I just think, because Jason mentioned Denver and how they match up with OKC. At least with Denver, you have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. I don't think the Lakers have anyone on that level defensively, especially factoring in the offensive contributions. Like maybe Marcus Smart for a series can get close to what those guys are doing, but he's nowhere near Aaron Gordon or Christian Brown offensively. So I think the Lakers just have a currently a bit of a roster construction issue where they have too many players that are one-way guys. And even a guy like Jake LaRavia, I thought really struggled last night with OKC's speed and physicality and some of his processing. So like he might be the closest thing they have to a true two-way guy, but even there, I think there's some defensive limitations in certain matchups. So I think overall, like I don't want to be too doom and gloom. They have 70 games to figure out some of these things, right? It's not about where they're at right now. It's about where they're at in April. But I do think coming off the offseason, I was like, this team is probably going to be slow and unathletic and bad defensively. That's how they've looked, in my opinion, through the first 12 games of the season. So it's a lot of like what we kind of knew going into the regular season with this group.
Yeah, 21st right now in defensive rating in the NBA. But again, it's the early going. But you're right. They're looking more like a bottom third defensive team that really needs their offense to pull them through games. And that is a tough spot to be in, particularly come playoff time. Not to go too Nico here or anything like that, but you do need defense in the postseason in order to win. Jason, are there solutions for this? I know you've talked a lot about the mentality here of this Lakers team and getting Luka and Austin going and that giving them more confidence. But is there another level this group can get to offensively, or does the end result have to be a trade to get them to that next level?
So when I look at this week in the 3 games, I kind of separate OKC from what happened in the Atlanta and Charlotte games. I thought what happened in the Atlanta-Charlotte games had a lot more to do with effort and energy. And then I thought what happened in the Oklahoma City game had a lot more to do with just losing belief and kind of letting go of the rope a little bit as they were getting their butts kicked. No one enjoys playing basketball when you're down by 20, 25 points. It's not the ideal set of circumstances. I think that when you look at the Atlanta game in particular, there's a certain like disadvantage you have when you're unathletic. You're a step behind, right? You're a step behind just in sheer athletic force of power, right? But then when you are mentally disengaged, that puts you another step behind. And when you're not playing particularly hard, that puts you a third step behind. So I think it's one of those things where I don't think they're quite as bad as they've looked this week. Because one, OKC's OKC. They just did the same damn thing to Golden State the night before. So on the one hand, like OKC is OKC. Let's take that. Let's set it aside. In the Atlanta, like I expect the Lakers to look really bad when they don't play hard and when they're not mentally engaged like they were in the Atlanta game. That's exactly what's going to happen with their athletic limitations. Now, to the big picture, would I like to see the Lakers make some sort of roster balancing trade that brings in an athletic player that can play the 2 or the 3, that is a legitimate, like up and down the floor 2-way athlete? Yeah, of course, I'd like to see something like that. But I don't think they're quite as bad as they've looked this week, just simply because they played a couple of – Atlanta's actually sneaky good. They won again last night. I think the Lakers, that was just a bad case of them underestimating them. But Charlotte, of course they went in there. That is the textbook. This is 1 of 82, and we're in Charlotte. Let's just get out of here with a win and do the absolute bare minimum kind of thing. I don't think any of us have any delusions of grandeur. This isn't OKC. OKC literally is like plus 20 net when Shea is off the floor this year. They're an entirely different breed of like night to night competitiveness and energy and focus. with this Lakers team, I think we got to get used to the fact that there's going to be a dozen or so nights this year where they mail it in because they're playing a bad team and they're going to look super unathletic. We did see in the first chunk of the season when they started, 7-2 or whatever it was, during that stretch, they actually were a decent transition defense statistically. They actually were defending well in the half court statistically. They were throwing rotations and making extra efforts and scrapping for rebounds. Like, I think they can get to a level to be a top 4 seed in the West with the current level of athleticism, as long as they bring the requisite effort and energy and focus more often than not throughout the regular season. The question is, can they get athletic enough to compete with the top teams in the league? And ultimately, that's going to come down to what they can accomplish at the deadline.
Now, Jason, what you said about the Charlotte game actually bothers me a little bit about this Lakers team, in that if they were treating that Charlotte game as, and it did kind of look like this, as just one of 82, coming off a game in which they no-showed, I said they were disrespectful to the sport of basketball with the way that they showed up in Atlanta. They did not show up ready to play a game. That was an affront to the basketball gods. They were not ready to play at an NBA level. It happens to every team. Every team gets 1, maybe 2 games over the course of the season. You have a night, okay, we'll move past it. But the next night, you damn well better show up and have some fire to prove that that's not who you really are. So I was a little disappointed to see the Lakers didn't come out and just kick Charlotte's ass up and down the court all night long and have some sort of desire to prove last game is not truly representative of us. Instead, they did kind of do aside from the one quarter, they did kind of do this is one of 82. I don't know. Am I overreacting to that? Or did you guys kind of have that sentiment as well?
I think just a little bit. Like, all I mean by that is, like, I think it's really easier said than done to get up for the Charlotte Hornets without Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. Is all I'm trying to say. So, like,
sure.
let's say that they had the very next game against, let's just call it a middle of the pack Western Conference team. Like, let's call it like the Clippers or the Timberwolves or something like that. I think we would have seen them come out like opening tip with a ton of energy. I think it's just easier said than done, regardless of what happened in the previous game, to come out in Charlotte when Colin Sexton's the lead ball handler and they don't really have a lot of firepower in any phase of the game. Like, I think it was just an example of them kind of falling victim to the bad basketball that they played, that the entire game was kind of breeding, if that makes sense. But I do think the point you're drawing is really important, which is what the Lakers are not is OKC in terms of like a night to night, let's attack every game with a ton of intensity and focus and energy. And there's a debate to be had about whether or not that puts a ceiling on what they can accomplish. But I also think some of it's the personality of the team. Like, I don't think they have a group that is like super focused on kicking everybody's ass physically every night. They want to outscore teams. And I think that they're going to do a lot of that throughout this season.
I'm a little bit more on the Trevor side in the sense of, like, I think one of my early issues with this group is, like, they haven't technically had a wire-to-wire win. And I think that was kind of what Jason was just alluding to in terms of, like, compared to OKC. But I think, on paper, they are good enough to, like, they're 5th in the West right now, and they've been top 4 for most of the season. And the fact that right now they are 21st in net rating, they have a negative net, and obviously this was swayed by the OKC loss, but the fact that they are 8-4 and are 21st in net rating, and like they're behind teams that, they're behind the Hornets in net rating right now. Like that kind of speaks volumes to like the start. They're behind the Phoenix Suns, they're behind the Orlando Magic, like they're behind teams that are below 500 in net rating, and that's obviously the 70 games, as I said earlier, to kind of address that. But like, the one thing I have not seen from this group yet to start the season has been like, we're going to control this game from start to finish. And I don't know how much of that's like in my opinion, it's kind of a defensive thing where the defense has been so generally bad that they can't really create that separation of we're up 15-20 against the, and look, they haven't played like the worst teams in the league yet. We'll see what they look like against Brooklyn. We'll see what they look like against Washington and New Orleans. I think New Orleans is a perfect example of, like, I would like to see them come out, control that game from the opening tip and beat that team by 20, get some rest, and then go into that Milwaukee back-to-back with, freshest, as fresh as you could have legs at the end of a road trip. But like, I think in general, they've basically been in dogfights every single game, and there's been a couple of exceptions. Like I think that Minnesota game, they had some separation. The first one in the second half, and sort of the Memphis game was a weird one, but otherwise, like they only have 3 double-digit wins on the season, and a couple of those were like barely double-digit. So I would like to see just like some better 48-minute basketball from this group, rather than like a couple of big spurts where that's ultimately the difference in the game.
Yeah, I think they can be very, very good offensively with what we've seen. I mean, they've been the best pick and roll team in the NBA so far. We did see a lot last night, though. When that didn't work, they resorted to ISO ball very, very quickly. It didn't have a counterpunch to go to, but they can be a great offensive team. I think they can have bigger wins, but you're right. There isn't a lot of consistency within any particular game. The switch gets flipped on and off seemingly by this team quite a bit. And that doesn't necessarily bode well. However, it's also fair, in the context of when we obviously sitting in this moment where you just got your butts kicked all night long by OKC, that doesn't feel good. When you step back and you look at the context of the whole season and where they're at record-wise and the injuries they've had and all of that, it's hard to feel too bad. But there are definitely some things that they're going to need to improve upon ultimately if they're going to get to where they want to go. They've got to find that consistency, and maybe that simply comes with the return of LeBron James. So let's get into that. Actually, before we do that, let's get into a couple of super chats here to knock out a few of these. Kevin, optimistic as ever, said OKC just signed AJ Mitchell for 3 years, $9 million. Probably have a top 10 pick for the next 3 years. That is such the gut punch, because every time Lakers fans see the Clippers lose and want a fist pump, it's, oh wait, but the Thunder have their pick. Let's trade Austin Reaves and Luka for picks and try to contend in 2040. Well, I love the exaggeration of 2040, but no, I don't think the Lakers are going to tank and try to contend in 2040. But the Thunder are, look, we've said it. We've had 7 new champions in each of the last 7 years. If anybody was set up the best to break that streak, it is the Oklahoma City Thunder this year.
They are plus 35 on the scoreboard with Shea, Chet, and J-Dub all off the floor.
Good Lord.
If you exclude garbage time. Last night they blew the game open in the second quarter with Shea off the court. Like they're so damn good. But hey, hold out hope. It's
well, see, normally,
I thought AJ Mitchell was huge last night. Like he kicked the Lakers' ass.
And people are like, where'd he come from? Who's number 12? Right? Like that type of thing. And he barely played last year. He dealt with injuries and stuff last year. But it's like, holy crap, the Thunder just found another guy.
They just spawn guys off their bench that come in and Ousmane Dieng also had some big plays. Like they're just
it's funny because most of the time when you've got this like one dominant team, you're like, well, you never know. I mean, last year everybody was saying it was going to be Boston, and then injuries hit and they didn't play well in the playoffs and all that. This is the Thunder injured right now. And so that doesn't exactly breed a whole lot of confidence in someone else winning the championship this year. But again, long way to go. A lot of basketball left to play. I want to use this question to kind of springboard into our topic on here on LeBron. Mamadou said, another problem with our roster is that we're playing role players that are not giving us enough. Okay, LeBron James coming back, which could happen as soon as the 18th, which is quickly approaching. That would be the earliest. We know he's not going to play on this road trip. May practice Monday and then potentially return on Tuesday. But nothing set in stone for that. We shouldn't be assuming that he will. But that will change the slotting on this team. That slides some people down, some people out of the rotation. So is there some truth to the role players not giving the Lakers enough? And how much does LeBron James change things for this team, given the specific weaknesses that they have versus just the influx of talent that LeBron brings? And Jason, we'll start with you.
So, I mean, we talked a lot about LeBron in the last couple of weeks. I don't want to go into too much detail there, but he's obviously going to help both on the ball and off the ball. He just gives another person that OKC or whoever it is they're playing has to match up with, which can maybe give Austin a better matchup. It can maybe get LeBron better matchups, another vehicle with which to enter the defense. It's a massive increase in just like the aggregate offensive skill in most of your lineups, because you got an awesome catch and shoot player who's also an awesome ball handler, playmaker, screener, cutter, finisher around the rim, all those things. Like, obviously LeBron's going to help. I was thinking a lot last night about like Vando's minutes, and I just kept thinking if I just gave all of Vando's minutes to LeBron James, that's a pretty big difference. And there are some other little spots in the rotation where they haven't had flexibility where they could with LeBron. There's centerless looks they could go to. Like Ayton was kind of a no-show last night. There's a version of that game where they end up going to more centerless looks with LeBron on the floor. He's obviously going to make things a lot easier. I think that when it comes to the question specifically about role players not giving us enough, I am always super hesitant to go after role players when stars aren't playing well. Like Luka, for example, over the course of the last 5 games, can't make a jump shot. I don't think that's a role player's fault. He's taken 88 jump shots in the last 5 games, and he's gotten just 64 points out of them. That's 0.73 points per shot. He's missing all of his mid-ranges. He's missing all of his step-back threes. Luka's not playing very well. As a result, he's not drawing the attention that he usually draws. He's not able to make the reads that he usually makes. So, like, my thing is I start to look at role players when your stars are playing really well and dudes can't finish with the advantages they're given. Then I'm going to start looking at the role players. And who knows? There's a version of this where maybe LeBron comes back and LeBron, Luka, and Austin are great. And then they drop a game to OKC in February because the role players can't keep up. And maybe that's where we end up having that conversation. But I'm just not going to go after role players when stars lay eggs like they did last night.
Yeah, I mean, LeBron's going to help. I think, I've referenced this now several times, but, this comment has stuck with me about Chris Finch earlier in the season talking about how to defend a Luka-only lineup versus a Luka and LeBron lineup. And I think about the 4-on-3 and 3-on-2 opportunities that the Lakers had against OKC, and just imagining LeBron in that scenario, either as the short roll playmaker or as someone cutting along the baseline or, through the paint and finishing. So I think both on and off the ball, he will help unlock different wrinkles within the Lakers offense. I do want to touch on, Jason mentioned DeAndre Aton, and I would say, like, to me, he has really struggled for the entire road trip. I thought he was like kind of the poster boy for the Atlanta loss in terms of just not really trying defensively, and some of the motor questions that we had going into the season with him, or that we've heard about going back to Portland and Phoenix. I thought they were present in that game. And then frankly, I think that's carried over for the entirety of the road trip. Looking at this is jarring, and he has struggled with turnovers to a degree to start the season. But on this road trip, he has 10 turnovers and 1 assist. And that is just, that is problematic. He's averaging 10 points a game and 5 rebounds per game. And I thought he did not look like several of the guys struggled, to be clear. I thought Luka had his worst game of the season. I thought Austin had his worst game of the season. And I thought DeAndre had his worst game of the season against OKC. But he did not look like he belonged out there against Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet, at least last night, right? So one game, but I think he's really struggled. And to me, it's a little disappointing coming off of the San Antonio game, where I thought we were talking last week, singing his gospel of how great he looked defensively, how many big plays he made, and how he outplayed Wemby. And then, it seems like there's a human nature element here of you're playing Atlanta, they don't have anybody, you're playing Charlotte, it's not the sexiest matchup. Okay, maybe you take your foot off the gas, but then to kind of no show again against OKC, I don't think this is going to be the norm moving forward, but we have seen that he was on his best behavior, let's say, for the first 8-9 games of the season, but I think that has slipped a bit, and I think his floor is a little bit lower than we maybe thought or hoping for based on the start of the season.
And Suns fans, Blazers fans right now saying, yep, this is what he does. Is the honeymoon over? I mean, this is the DeAndre Aton over the past 3 games that we feared, that Blazers fans and especially Suns fans loathed. We saw a much better version of him prior to this. Is there a way back to that guy, or is this just kind of part of the DeAndre Aton experience?
I think he's going to be kind of like the barometer of the team in a lot of ways, in the sense that I think he's going to kind of take on the personality of the team in that night. I don't think he's going to be the kind of guy that digs the team out of a hole with effort, energy, focus, and playmaking. I think, like, in a lot of ways, when LeBron, Luka, and Austin are locked in and they're playing their best basketball, I think Ayton's going to be great. And I think he's going to feed off of that. And I think he's going to bring the requisite effort. And I think he's going to benefit off the attention they generate on offense. And I think on nights when they don't, I expect Ayton to look bad. And like, that's kind of the thing. I think Ayton's going to be very much a guy who's just another bandwagon kind of like effort, energy, and focus guy. And I think that in many ways he embodies the personality of the team on this road trip.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem to be an accurate way to look at this. They've got to get more out of him. I mean, I had people during the game telling me the Lakers may need to look at giving more minutes to Jackson Hayes, simply because of the energy that he was providing the team compared to DeAndre Aton. And that's not a great sign if Jackson Hayes is the preferred option over DeAndre, and certainly not reflective of what he had been prior to that. And that's where, of course, I think Suns fans and Blazers fans have been so frustrated with him over the years.
Well, in a game like that, defensively, and against Atlanta and Charlotte, I thought Jackson was just straight up more impactful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You got to make that call in those games, but ultimately, I think the best version of the Lakers is going to involve Ayton.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You need him to be at his best, just like you need Luka and Austin to be at his best as well, or at their best. All right, we need to talk about this Austin Reaves topic. We've got a few more super chats we need to get into as well. We'll get there in just one moment. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Just going to give a shout out here to our fantastic presenting sponsor, and that is Sleeper.
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using code HMA. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
And right now, Sleeper is a great promo code. Get that $100 deposit match up to $100. Again, that code is HMA, and you guys can check them out, use their picks and all of that. Eventually, I'll get our screens all slid over when we go over to this. Jason's going to slide over and join Jovan over there. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Austin Reaves, because really struggled in this one, and Luka did as well. The whole team, frankly, struggled. But Austin in particular, this was the fear, and this was a lot of the conversation over the offseason. A lot of people were of the mindset that Austin and Luka cannot work moving forward because of this exactly, that if you run into a more athletic team, if you run up against a team that ramps up their athleticism, particularly when we talk about playoffs, where effort and energy and athleticism game by game is going to be at 100% instead of regular season, it may be at 75, maybe at 80%. Guys like Austin can struggle if they can't make up for that athleticism deficit. And this will be the game, and is the game right now, that those on that side of things will point to and say, this is it. This is the evidence. You cannot move forward with Austin Reaves. He must be moved, fired into the sun, whatever. There are a lot of people that are very venomous about Austin Reaves. But where are you guys at on the pairing at this point? Does this change the way you see Luka and Austin as a duo moving forward?
Well, I think the people that are using this game as a vehicle with which to send Austin out of town are making a foolish mistake. I think that this Thunder team has kind of humiliated a lot of stars around the league. Tyrese Halliburton is a guy that I think is pretty unanimously considered either a top 10 or top 15 player in terms of overall impact. And he had pretty rough finals at various stretches against that Thunder defense. I watched Julius Randle completely decompose against that Thunder defense. I watched Anthony Edwards have a brutally bad playoff series. I watched a lot of different guys on Denver struggle throughout that series. Jaren Jackson and Desmond Payne disappeared into the upside down in their matchup against Oklahoma City. There is a certain amount of let's tip the cap to OKC and understand that they can brutalize people. I mean, if you wanted to use last night as an example, you could try to say that Luka is not a top tier superstar because he couldn't score against Oklahoma City's defense. I don't think I think let's just give OKC credit for kicking their ass. I think that there is a clear, large sample of evidence that Austin is worth a max contract because he does so much to impact winning in so many different phases of the game. And against the majority of matchups, I think he's more than up to the task. And even when we talk about the athletes, he was awesome in both Minnesota games. And those are teams that present a bunch of athletic difficulties for him, and including the playoff series last year where he had struggled in that matchup. And so I think there's on the one hand, it's like, does this say anything about whether or not Austin is good enough to be the future of the franchises alongside Luka? No. Austin's fine on that front. But if Austin can't score and create shots against OKC, then can the Lakers beat OKC? Probably not. So, like, there's a certain amount of, like, that specific challenge has to get figured out. But if we follow that line of thinking, no one's beating OKC, because there's a lot of different teams that are going to have that exact same problem with their secondary star unable to score against that defense. So, like, I would just say, first of all, Austin can play a lot better than he did. I thought he came out with a really weird mentality. I thought the biggest signifier of that weird mentality was when he got that first drop coverage look against the three. The first three he took at the top of the key. All season long, he has been killing teams by seeing that runway and going, I'm getting to the rim. And I'm either finishing with one of those extended arm layups, or I'm getting into the big's body to draw a foul, or kind of like that play in the early third quarter where he gets into Hartenstein's chest and then spins off for that, like, short little fadeaway. That's Austin Reaves basketball. Him settling for that three, I thought, was him just kind of coming into the game with the wrong mentality. And I thought that kind of colored things throughout, especially in the first half before things got out of hand. So, like, ultimately, Austin can play better. Austin is absolutely equipped to be the number 2 for this franchise moving forward. But yeah, if he can't play better against OKC, then you're dead on arrival in that matchup.
Agreed. I mean, I also think that if we take a step back and look at the bigger picture here, like, Austin isn't going to be the number 2 against OKC when LeBron is back, in my opinion, right? So right now, I think he's shown an ability to be slotted as the number 2 and the number 1 at different points this season, but at least for this version of the team. Obviously, we could have a different discussion about the future and what, and I think we need a larger sample size, frankly, of let's see what he looks like the other 3 matchups against OKC. But for now, yes, it looks like there's maybe a limitation for Austin being the number 2 against maybe one of the greatest defenses of all time. I don't think that's hyperbole. Like, I think OKC is in that conversation based on the start that they've had. I mean, already was in that conversation going off last year, but, like, their defense has leveled up to a different level. But I think that the thing with Austin is, as Jason pointed out, like, I think he's fared well against some of the more athletic teams that the Lakers have played this season. This was his first stinker of the season. Now, OKC is the standard, right? And the Lakers are likely they're either going to have to go through OKC at some point in the playoffs, or they're going to go through a team that somehow survived OKC and beat OKC. So theoretically, like, that team is at a certain level. So I think this is, like, JJ likes to use the term reference point. I think this is a reference point. And I know, look, the people who don't believe in Austin, don't like Austin, they're going to hold on to this for dear life until at least February when they play OKC again. And, like, if you don't think Austin and Luka fit together, I think this is your confirmation, and you're going to choose to kind of believe in this. Like, I think it's how you want to view it. Certainly it was a bad game. It was his worst game of the season. But again, I think if you look at how he performed against Minnesota, how he performed against Portland, I'd even throw in Miami as a group with, like, Davion Mitchell being the primary guy on him. Like, I mean, he shredded Jaden McDaniels in that matchup in Minnesota. And that was a guy who he was obviously largely on Luka for the playoffs, but, like, when he would switch on to Austin, that would be a matchup that quickly Austin, like, would look to get off the ball or couldn't really create separation. He annihilated him. Now, OKC is a different beast defensively because they got the 2 7-footers. They got speed and athleticism everywhere. They're frenetic, as I mentioned earlier. They make you scramble, and they just kind of get you out of your game. So this is a reference point, and we will, moving forward, kind of evaluate him. OKC is kind of its own animal here, but certainly something that to kind of keep in mind. But I don't think to me, this doesn't wipe away everything he's done up to this point in the season. I think that would be, if you're only going to hold your evaluation of a player to how they fare against OKC, as Jason laid out, like I think that's a foolish way to evaluate guys.
To those that are anti-Austin, though, it's the confirmation of everything that they were thinking, right? And that's like, as you said, they're going to grab onto that, and they are going to erase everything else that happened. For example, I had the conversation many times over the course of the summer. How heavily do you weight the playoffs versus the regular season? And if you're of the mindset that Austin and Luka can never, ever work, and it's awful, and you need to get rid of this, then the playoffs are all that matters. And what he did over the regular season does not count whatsoever. And I think that's going to be the approach from some fans as well when we look at this. But to your point, Austin Reaves against Minnesota in 2 games averaged 27 and 14 with 27 assists on 4 turnovers. Against Miami, it was 11 assists, 3 turnovers, and put up 26, 4, and 11 in that game. And those are some more athletic defenses. And again, that would be counter to the idea that he can't find success against more athletic teams. Again, the OKC matchup being the counterpoint to it. But something Jason said, and Jovan, you touched upon this too, that Austin can't be the second guy against OKC. And there are some that will arrive at, well, if he can't be the second guy against OKC, then he can't be the second guy, period. Moving forward, does that help inform if he can't be the second guy in certain matchups? Jason said he's a max player. Can you be a max player in today's collective bargaining agreement if you can't always be the second best guy? Like, should that matter when it comes to the Lakers figuring out how they're going to structure their salaries into potentially a post-LeBron future that could be starting as soon as next season?
You know, I think that I talked about this in last week's show, I believe. It was either last week's or the week before, but the idea that like the Minnesota series just put a stink on the entire season, and then everyone just decided that Lakers team was bad. Mm-hmm. I think similarly, it kind of did something like that with Austin. This is a guy who's had 20 points in a playoff game 10 times. Like, Austin can have a great deal of success in the postseason. And he has made big shots and big plays and had big games that have helped the Lakers win playoff series, like multiple series. He was instrumental in the Memphis series, closing out game 1 down the stretch. I thought he was excellent throughout the Golden State series, especially in game 6 of that series. Like, I think that Austin is a good basketball player who can succeed in the playoffs, who had a bad series against Minnesota. And once again, one of the things we talked about earlier, like, I think there were some trickle-down effects there. There were different things that went wrong that affected the entire team, including Austin. And so I think that a lot of what we talked about with OKC is kind of like a OKC particular problem. Like, we are, other than like Pascal Siakam and like Nikola Jokic, we haven't really seen many people go up against this Oklahoma City. Like, even Luka, when they beat them in 2024, it wasn't a great statistical series for them. He beat them with some specific sequences, a lot of like burning them for helping off of PJ Washington with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but like, he wasn't averaging a 35-point triple-double in that second-round series against OKC. This Oklahoma City defense is really good. He just has to be better than he has been. I think Luka has to be better than he has been too. I think that also there's a certain amount of like, when LeBron comes back, the ability for the three of them to feed off of each other should make life easier. The ability to run 3-man action with them, which should give Austin more advantage opportunities to attack. I think he can be better. I think Austin is like clearly, like, by any measure, worth a max and absolutely worth building around as that second guy. Again, even if you want to say he's not as athletic as some other potential options, when you look at his combination of like off-ball scoring, on-ball scoring, playmaking, just high IQ, be in the right spot, bring the right attitude and energy every night kind of guy. Like, I just think he's a winner, and he's a guy that I'd want on my basketball team. And so I think him conquering the OKC demon is a problem that 99% of the league has. So I don't want to single him out as like, oh, well, he can't score against OKC. Well, then, okay, let's give Julius Randle a mid-level exception too. Like, what are we doing here?
For me, it comes down to, like, I echo basically everything Jason just said. Like, I've said this before. I think this season is an audition, not just for Austin, but for basically every Laker for how they fit around Luka. And we're 12 games into the season. We still have 70 games left. I think up to this point, it's been an A. It was probably an A plus going into last night. Maybe last night dropped it from an A plus to an A. But I think it's like Austin's still averaging 28, 5 and 8, right? Like I think if we heard or knew that going into the season, you would take that from Austin, that level of production from Austin Reaves. So I think up to this point, it has largely been positive and has been a success. We will see how the next 70 games go. And then I think more importantly, we'll see how the playoffs go, right? Because maybe they play Minnesota in round one. That could be a 4-5, 3-6 matchup or something. And we'll see how he performs against Ant and Jaden and Dante DiVincenzo. Maybe they play OKC in the second round and we'll see how he performs, right? So I think there's still like a mystery box element here for me where we just don't know what it's going to look like. We have the sample size dating back to last season, obviously the disappointment in the playoffs, and then the start of this season. And I'm trying to factor in that he got better and that like I'm trying to weigh this season a little bit more. But certainly if he struggles in all 4 games against OKC and he has a stinker in the first round and the Lakers lose in like 6 and are upset as the favorites again, then that's a different conversation that we will have at that point. But I think to just project that or cast that out or assume it's going to happen is an unfair assumption, in my opinion, for what Austin has done, at least to start this season. But to also Jason's point, I think he's largely been a positive in the playoffs. The one thing has been the 3-point shooting. That has carried over where he struggled in the Denver series, he struggled in the Minnesota series, and he's shooting 30% on threes right now. So that's something that he has to get better with because that does affect and impact how he could play off the ball. But I think it's largely been very positive to start this season. I don't want to overreact to one game, but again, it's a reference point. And if he struggles again against OKC or other specific teams in the playoffs, then we have a different conversation.
Can I add one other quick note?
Go for it.
The Lakers played the Oklahoma City Thunder last season in the regular season with Lou Dort playing, with J-Dub, and Austin and Luka combined for 50, and as a team, they cut them to shreds with their offense. So, like, and again, I'm not trying to sit there and say that just means that the Lakers are should be on equal footing with the Thunder. I'm not trying to make any point like that. The point is like they had a really bad night. Austin had a bad night. Luka had a bad night. The Thunder threw a great punch. They kicked their ass. The Lakers are capable of playing better. The Thunder are clearly a better team. But like we've seen this team be able to score against this Thunder defense. Even before Luka got ejected on that one play at the second half of the second game, they were scoring. We had like an extended 6-quarter stretch last year where the Lakers were cutting through that OKC defense with a combination of LeBron and Luka punishing their smalls and Luka punishing their bigs in space, getting the ball out to shooters, guys knocking down shots. Like last night was ugly. It was humiliating. It was certainly something that should have the Lakers locker room kind of looking at each other in the mirror and being like, we got to be better at X, Y, Z. But I think that there's a lot of jumping to conclusions over a November regular season game that we've seen from some people that I just don't think is fair under the circumstances.
And I'm with you guys ultimately in that this still needs a larger sample size. And that was where I was at going into the season was we need to find out what Luka and Austin are together as a duo. Can this ultimately work or not? Austin's had a very good season overall over the course of the year. And is it something that can work, but informs what the rest of your roster needs to look like, or is it something that simply can't work? And I don't think we're at a point where you can land in either spot. Again, there's been a lot of positive over the course of the season. I don't think you can land at a spot where you could say, no, it simply can't work, even though there are some that are there. But guys, I have a feeling we're going to be riding this roller coaster all season. If Austin shoots 5 for 17 in a game and the Lakers lose, it's going to be, exile him, send him off into the unknown or out onto the ice in Batman or something like that. I was watching that movie the other day. Sorry. Or if he goes for 51, it's going to be never trade this guy ever again. And part of that is just the nature of fandom, and we'll ride the highs and lows, of course, as the team goes through the season.
Agreed.
All right, let's finish out getting into a few of our super chats here. Kevin said, on a serious note, would you consider trading Austin Reaves for Tari Eason and Clint Capella? One of or both best of the Nets or Suns pick in 2026, or best of Mavs or Suns pick. So I guess I'm reading this as Clint Capella, Tari Eason, and a pick for Austin Reaves with the Houston Rockets.
I wouldn't trade Austin Reaves under any circumstances unless I was getting back a player that I thought was a better number 2. So like, yeah, if it's Austin for Giannis, we can talk about it. But like right now, I can't think of a number 2 that makes sense. That's reasonably available. That makes sense for the Lakers to target. But again, we talked about this with Rui. I don't think you can trade Rui unless you get back a guy who's going to be a starting small forward for you for years to come. And I don't think you can trade Austin unless he can be that number 2 option off of Luka for years to come.
Yeah. And folks in the chat, Jason's not saying Giannis for Austin is like a real thing. We're talking about like that's what it would require. Not that that's a real possibility. Just saying you're probably not going to make the team better by trading Austin. Like if you trade Austin for Tari Eason, does that make you better? Probably not. Even though I like Tari Eason as a player, that's not going to improve your team overall. Nor is that the bar that you would have to clear for the Lakers to be willing to part with them.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the Bucks should trade Giannis for Austin. I'm talking about in
I will say that. I think they should.
You shouldn't trade Austin unless you're getting back the guy who's going to be Luka's number 2 for years to come.
Yeah, I agree. And just in terms of like how the Lakers view this, like I think it has to be a player that would even like I'm not even going to frame it through like a number 2 perspective, but I've reported for like 3 years now that the Lakers are only evaluating potential Austin trades if they're getting back an all-star level player, which I guess we could then put as like a potential number 2 or number 3. But they're not trading him for, like, I will say this definitively, they are not trading Austin Reaves for a role player, which I like Tari Eason. I think he could be a really good 3-and-D starting option for a team. They're not trading him for that type of player.
Yep. 100%. All right. Mamba mentality. So we were going to use this Thunder game as a measuring stick. Instead, OKC took the measuring stick and beat us upside the head. Hello, Lakers fan. Yes, indeed. I don't really have much to comment on that. Other than yes, that's accurate.
My YouTube title was OKC dog walked the Lakers. It was along the same lines.
I have just 2 cents. I think that the Lakers are riding a little high, which I think is fun. It's fun for us as fans. They look better than they thought they were going to be. But I think sometimes a good ass kicking is good for the soul, and I think it can get you to get a little bit. Sometimes players can get a little full of themselves, and I think everybody in the Lakers needed a little bit of like a, hey, we're not quite where we need to be yet. And I think that was a good wake up call for them last night.
That's a great silver lining, and hopefully this does wind up being that wake up call. Jonathan said, I noticed with OKC they dictate pace with making the offense second guess and then catch them in the blender. Floor general LeBron would help a lot. Yeah, in terms of from an organizational perspective, Jason, we've talked about it a bit, but I guess just to reflect, LeBron James helps quite a bit when it comes to just getting guys to have that processing speed that we were discussing.
Yeah, on both ends of the floor. I think there's a certain amount of like defensive communication from LeBron that would help a lot as well. LeBron is very good at anticipating what other teams are running and getting in front of actions. And then on the offensive end of the floor, we talked about like that aggregate ball handling and playmaking piece. Like, so let's say, for instance, that LeBron is healthy and you've got a Lou Dort or a Cason Wallace that's on Luka. Chances are LeBron's going to be guarded by Chet or maybe J-Dub. And so it's one of those things where like you can bring him into the screening action, whether it's through double drag or, 3-man action, something along the lines where LeBron's involved, and work on LeBron being essentially the outlet so that he can be the guy that makes that next read. That's the dream. That's that point Draymond kind of concept that we've been talking about. Draymond 2.0 with LeBron James' offensive skill at the forefront of it. I think that LeBron ultimately just raises their IQ and overall skill on both ends of the floor substantially.
I mean, if you think about it in the most simple way, like if you just take Rui or Marcus Smart off the floor and put LeBron James on the floor, I think the Lakers offense is going to look much better, right? And just be more organized. And again, some of the processing stuff that they struggled with off of the ball and some of the decision making that they struggled with against OKC, I think that goes away when you put arguably the greatest player of all time, and certainly one of the best passers of all time, and one of the best finishers, and one of the best cutter. Like LeBron is just he's the ultimate Swiss Army knife with what he can do. Shot 40% on catch and shoot threes the last couple seasons. We know about the cutting. I think, as a screener, has embraced being more of a screener and roller progressively the last couple of years. So I don't want to overthink LeBron's potential impact, as we've discussed now for a couple of weeks here. Like, you just replace one of those guys with LeBron, depending on if you want to lean more defense or offense. And yeah, the offense is going to look much better.
And Marcus can't shoot. Marcus can't shoot.
I mean, that's been another thing.
Putting LeBron back out there puts all 5 guys can be in scoring position at all times in a different way than what it is right now with Marcus.
I've been saying on my show, like, guy who's famous for being good at basketball can help a basketball team. I mean,
it's
crazy analysis, right?
Quickly on this note, I want to close a loop on something here. I have come back around to Marcus being the 5th starter. Remember last week I was wobbling with Jake versus Marcus, and I had been team Marcus since the offseason, and then with Jake's recent play, I think we've seen a floor that, like, I definitely just think Marcus is the choice.
I'm with you. I would go Marcus as well, but good to get the update there. Mamba mentality. How many performances like this to start to worry? Well, if they get blown out by 30 to the Pelicans, time to worry.
I would start to worry about them if they slipped into the play-in bracket. Like, to me, in the Western Conference, if you're staying in that top 6, you're doing something right.
Agreed. Yeah.
And right now they're a game ahead of the Suns, who are 7th. So
surprisingly 7th. The Suns have been better than expected.
Yeah, Jordan not.
Yeah, there you go. Despite the 2 bad losses in Atlanta and OKC, I feel like we're playing with house money. This comment says LeBron won't fix anything or everything. We still haven't seen our best. Yeah, I mean, we can't forget how they've had 7, 8, I believe, different starting lineups at this point in the season. So many players in and out of the lineup. Yeah, this is not the peak for the Lakers this season. If this is the peak, it means there was some catastrophic injuries that took place from here on out. This should be nowhere near what the peak for this team is.
You look at their schedule coming up. Like, I remember coming into the season, I thought, okay, LeBron's out, but the schedule looks kind of light. The schedule ended up being tougher than we thought, because San Antonio ended up being tougher, and because Portland ended up being tougher, and there were some things that ended up making that tougher. And then obviously Luka and Austin missing as much time as they did. But I remember thinking going into the season, like, if they end up 10-5, that's a win. And I think there's a really good chance that they go 10-5. Milwaukee's a tough game. I think they'll beat the Pelicans. Milwaukee's a really tough game. Milwaukee's playing really good basketball. That's a tough one to win on the road, especially on the second night of a back-to-back. But even if you drop that one, you come home and you got Utah, you're going to be 10-5. Utah again, you're going to be 11-5. The Clippers are vulnerable right now. Dallas is a team that you can beat. The Pelicans again, like, you can end this month sitting in pretty strong position in the standings with LeBron coming back to the team. Like, I think this is, I know it seems really down right now, and you get that belt to ass from a real championship contender, but the Lakers got off to a strong start to the season. They are capable of playing a lot better even than what they've shown to this point. They've got strong reinforcements on the way. They've got good, like, kind of mid-level salaries to move for, tweaks on the margins of the roster when they get to February. I think Lakers fans should still feel pretty good about where they're at, even if we can acknowledge OKC is another level ahead at this point.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. MJ said playoff Austin Reaves showed up last night. More pick and roll action. We already talked about the Austin Reaves of it all, so we don't have to go back into it. But in terms of more pick and roll, the Thunder did a nice job defending it. And then I thought the Lakers, I have not subjected myself to a rewatch, and usually that's what I do to dig into all of that. But to me, it felt like watching while doing the play-by-play, the Lakers were devolving into a lot of ISO when their initial action got blown up. And you guys can maybe speak to that more. I don't know if the solution is more pick and roll action versus having more counters to what the Thunder were throwing at them.
Yeah, well, one thing that Cran just noted on X that I think is something I want to look for more is that he was noting that the Lakers have like several pet plays that they telegraph based on the way they sort of organize and assemble in terms of just spots on the floor that, obviously he's really into the offensive organization and the different, points per possession on each action that they're running and whatnot. But like he was noting that some of that stuff is, if you're scouting the Lakers, it is very obvious on film when they align in a certain way that they're going to go to a certain thing. So I wonder how much of that played into it from like an OKC scouting perspective. In general, like I thought they when they went to Chicago last night, I thought they got some good stuff. Like there was a couple of deep seal post-ups or flashes for Ayton. They were able to get some pretty good things out of that. They just didn't go to it consistently enough. And I thought when they went, I actually think when they went with like a more traditional pick and roll, OKC was able to then either switch that and feel okay with Chet on like Luka, or they were then blitzing and trapping, forcing the ball out of Luka's hands, and LA wasn't able to capitalize. So I think this is really a reference point for LA in terms of like, they have to rewatch this game. They have to go through that painful experience and they have to learn from this. And I think this needs to be like the floor for them of how can we improve moving forward.
So Austin saw some blitzes. He also, we talked about the deep drop look he saw in the early part of the game where he took the pull-up three. I think for Austin, the big thing is the attacking. It's just he's got to start those games setting the tone with downhill attacking, force the officials to make calls, and or to, inevitably loosen up the defense through getting some of those calls. But like if they're going to blitz Austin and he can't get the ball out, if they're going to blitz Luka and he can't get the ball out to the right spots, it's not really about running pick and roll to get a certain coverage, because all you're doing is bringing that second defender in who's getting deflections and causing the turnovers that are leading them out the other way. I think ultimately what stood out to me with Austin was just less of an attacking attitude than he needed to start that game.
All right, let's go here to Jordan. Said, happy to listen to Three Goats here. Well, thank you. But sad about OKC giving Lakers that belt to ass. Need 2018 Braun back. Got a time machine? And Ayton to get out of his own head. We kind of talked about both those guys. Like, obviously, 2018, LeBron's not coming back. And we talked about DeAndre Ayton. But, LeBron will help things. And DeAndre Ayton, we need to get back to honeymoon mode Ayton, where he's on his best behavior and out there flying up and down the floor and setting the screens, rolling hard to the basket, and protecting the rim. That's for sure. The Ayton we need to see.
They got a
I'll
lot
take 2025 LeBron.
Yeah,
yes.
I'll take that player too.
Yes.
They got a long time before that next February matchup with OKC. We just talked about their schedule is going to lighten up a little bit. That should give a long runway for LeBron to get back into a groove. Like, essentially, you got to embrace the challenge now. You have the next 3 months or so to try to get better for your next measuring stick game.
All right, let's go here. Grant Way said, Collins, Luka and Austin Reaves duplicity. Austin Reaves being a better off-ball player. Would you consider a Giannis for Luka trade? I don't think Luka's limitations are going to age well in 7 to 10 years. There's rumors out there that the Mavs may have kind of checked in on something like that before talking with the Lakers, and Milwaukee was not in favor of swapping out Giannis for Luka.
I would rather have Luka.
Me too. Yeah, it's two things. Giannis is in a later stage of his career, and then I just think these offensive engine types are easier to build around.
I would agree. And age, of course, is the big factor for me there. The CBA is designed to favor teams like OKC that have built through the draft. Is it? Something we've failed at since Russ. Are we fighting an uphill battle? See, teams like the Celtics will tell you right now that the CBA screwed them over and is forcing them to get rid of a good team because they were able to add players, add talent, and drafted well with the Jays. I don't know that it's designed necessarily to favor teams who build through the draft. What it's ultimately designed to do, besides prevent teams from spending, but one of the effects of that is that it's designed to make teams make difficult decisions. And we've seen it over the years now. Golden State had to make a difficult decision with Klay Thompson. They weren't willing to go to a certain number. The Denver Nuggets made a difficult decision on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. The Clippers had to make a difficult decision with Paul George, decisions that they would not have made under the older collective bargaining
Kind of
agreement.
worked out.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Although not really, like yes and no.
Yes and no. Yes, but also kind of no.
But also there. Yeah.
But as far as building through the draft, it's what really works out. It's not so much just when you build through the draft. It's when you continue to add those pieces, because ultimately what's going to happen, and the Thunder's roster is structured this way, so that next year they've got a bunch of team options on guys like iHeart and Dort and players like that off the top of my head. They'll have to make some tough decisions, most likely if they want to stay out of that second apron. But where building through the draft can really be successful is if you can continue to backfill that talent. Let's say they make a difficult choice and they say, Isaiah Hartenstein, we got to duck this second apron. We're not going to be able to bring you back. But then you've got another young talent coming up that for a cheap contract, not the same position, obviously, but like an AJ Mitchell, you get him on a $9 million deal and suddenly you've got a quality NBA starter. It's finding players like that continually. It's not so much just the initial build being through the draft, because ultimately as your team gets good, those players are still going to have to get paid, and that's going to bring your salaries up. And again, you're going to start hitting that dreaded second apron. It's having the players to replace the players who are taking those significant roles and their stature is rising in the NBA. That's the key. And that's really what the Thunder have right now, particularly when you look at not just the young talent on their team that seems to be able to step in to any role, but also the future allotment of draft capital. And it's very easy to just say, well, everybody should just follow the OKC model. But how many teams have a generational trade for an MVP plus, an all-star, which they got J-Dub with one of those picks, and all these other picks that they've got moving forward that kind of land in a fairly unique situation that the Clippers are in when they made that trade with OKC. They've done a phenomenal job building moving forward. It's just much easier said than done to say, follow the OKC model and build through the draft than to actually accomplish what the Thunder have.
Yeah, I would say the CBA definitely favors teams that are defending champions that also have a dozen first-round draft picks over the yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, the thing is the Thunder can consistently get dudes who make less than 10 million that if they were 27 years old and the exact same level of basketball player would be making 25 million. That's what their advantage is. What this team will ultimately look like is they're going to lose all of the Case and Wallace, AJ Mitchell, Lou Dort types over the course of the next 5 years. They're going to lose them as they end up getting huge contracts, and they're just going to replace them with dudes on rookie scale deals. And then they'll have Shea, Chet, and J-Dub all making super maxes because they're all NBA level talents. And they're going to have they're just going to keep cycling through with their culture. But the point is that it's irrelevant to compare them to anybody else because they're such a profoundly unique situation, because you just don't see the team that's the best team in the league that also has the best draft trove in the entire NBA. It doesn't even make sense.
I do want to hit on, though, the second part of this, though, because I think we obviously just focused on the first part, but the Lakers have not drafted as well recently. Sure. If we're looking at this through an honest and critical lens, I think Dalton is looking like he was a draft night value, obviously, but that is looking like a miss. JHS, we haven't discussed on this show yet, but that was obviously a colossal miss, especially with the three players who went directly after him. Max Christie was a find, and we'll see what happens with Duthero once he's available to play. And then Isaiah, actually some good picks, Isaiah Jackson, Jaden McDaniels, and DeAndre Hunter, but they ended up, those players were all traded in various moves there. So, I mean, yeah, the recent track, of course, Austin is the shining example of a player that they uncovered, and he went undrafted in part to go to the Lakers initially on a two-way. Then he played his way onto the roster, and we could look at Rui as they've had some hits with former lottery guys, Rui, Malik Monk, those types of players. But even Jackson, what was I think is a small win for what the expectations were, but. Yeah, I mean, the draft track record has not been that good over the last few years.
Guys, I want to check in with you. I know we're 15 minutes here into overtime on this one. How are we looking? We do have a number of super chats still to get through. Do we want to reconvene at a later point? Are you guys good?
Keep going.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Let's do it.
Just want to make sure. Ali said we looked like JV versus varsity last night. Not good. Yeah, I mean,
ass kicking is good for the soul, guys.
There it is. Austin Reaves to the Spurs for Castle and 2 first-round picks. Are you getting that? Stuff on Castle plus 2 firsts for Austin Reaves, who needs a new contract next summer? I don't know if you're getting that. Rui, a pick swap for Wiggins.
I don't think Steph is good enough yet to match Luka's timeline. I like Steph Castle a lot, but he's really turnover prone, and they're starting to go under a lot of his picks. So he's not able to shoot over the top as effectively as he needs to. I like Steph. I just don't think he fits Luka's timeline.
And I know the Spurs like Austin Reaves, but I don't know if they're giving up the multiple firsts to make that, especially just knowing that Reaves needs a new contract.
With the second one, I think the Lakers are in a little bit of a tough spot asset wise, where I've made this point before, where like they have, it's either like they have to give the first up, which is an overpay for a lot of players, but then they don't have multiple seconds to give up because the pick swap. A pick swap is you essentially betting that the team that you're trading with is going to be worse than you that year that you are whenever the pick swap is for. And if I'm a rival front office, if I'm OKC, it's a different story because I'm set up for the foreseeable future. But the Lakers project to be a top 4 to 6 team in the NBA for the next 5 to 7 years with this Luka foundation. So if I'm Miami, even if I'm getting I don't know the Lakers pick swap years off the top of my head, but even if I'm getting let's just say a 2030 Lakers pick swap, I guess it would have to be some of the first that they control. If you're getting that pick swap from them, are you confident that you are going to be better than the Lakers in 2030? I would not be if I'm Miami. So the pick swaps do have some value. I don't want to completely dismiss them and say that they don't have any value, but I would, if I'm Miami's front office, I'm looking at this trade as basically Rui for Wiggins, and Wiggins is just a better player than Rui. He's having a pretty good year, pretty good start to the season. So I would not do that if I'm Miami.
Yeah, Miami would have to feel like there's something they were going to be able to do with the added flexibility of not having Wiggins $30 million on their books for next year. Like that would have to be the main driver. And given the way Miami's playing right now and the chemistry that they've showed so far this year, I don't think they'd be making that move.
The guy that I think makes sense, if you're going to trade Rui, it's got to be for starting 3. As much as I like Wiggins and he is a starting 3, he just doesn't fit the timeline. So that's what I start to look at, the Herb Jones types. If you can convert Rui into starting caliber 3 through something like that, like a swap in a second, then I'd look at that as something that I think makes sense. But it's hard to find a team like the teams that have the players that we're targeting don't necessarily need Rui either, which can affect the value compared to what it would be in a vacuum as well.
Yeah, how realistic is it that the Pelicans actually relent on Herb Jones, because they've been pretty steadfast? He's not available for a bit now.
I'm not the reporter type, so I'm not super connected to what's happening behind the scenes. But I could totally see, especially with the rise of Derek Queen, and I doubt they're in a huge rush to take on a Rui Hachimura type. And the ideal, Rui I think could play the 4 for the Lakers in the long run. So it's really just the advantage of converting Rui into a starting caliber 3 in a similar age range is it allows you to capitalize on the LeBron James era in a way that you couldn't otherwise, because then you can use LeBron as your 4 alongside this 3 of the future, but then also still have that starting caliber anchor after LeBron retires, which if you trade Rui for just about anything else, you lose that, if that makes sense. Or if you keep him, then you have the diminishing returns with LeBron.
My understanding is Herb Jones is more on the table than, say, Trey Murphy, right? Sure. And I actually think Herb Jones with his skill set probably fits a little bit more with what the Lakers need, specifically next to Luka. He's a better fit, in my opinion, next to Luka and Austin specifically. But even if you are moving on from Austin at some point in the future, I think Herb is the ideal type of backcourt mate with Luka, just from, or 2 or the 3, depending on how you structure things. But I actually think if they are, it would probably have to be Rui in the first. I don't think they would do that for, and then that's a different conversation if we think that's worth it. But I think the cost would probably be Rui and a first.
I think I would do that for Herb Jones.
I would too.
I like him. Nothing against Austin Reaves. He's not a max level player. I mean, if you look at the OKC game, you say, yes, he's not a max level player. You look at the 51-point game, you go, that's a max level player, right? It just, you go back and forth on that. I know this one, though. Trade Austin for Amen Thompson. Sure. But the Houston won't do that. I would do that.
With Austin, too, I think there's a sliding scale in terms of him making $40 million is different as like a max, that's his max, but
The fun max.
$40 million max player is different than a $60 million max player. So I would agree that Austin is not worth $60 million, but if you look at the guys in that $35 to $40 million range, which is the likely outcome here in terms of the starting point for Austin, I think he's very much in line, if not better than basically everyone else in that range.
Yeah. We say it all the time on the front office show. Not all first round picks are created equal. Because people tend to just hear first round pick and assign a certain value in their head when there's a wide range. Not all max contracts are created equal. There's a big difference between the 25% max and the 35% max. Appetizers crammed it all together. I don't know if you guys are from this era or not, but if you remember, like before cell phones, you guys probably don't remember. We before cell phones and all that, you would go to a payphone.
There was a time before cell phones.
There was a time before cell phones. You would call your parents to come pick you up, and you call collect, and when it asks you to say your name, you would just say, "Mom, I'm done, come get me," and then that way they wouldn't have to accept the call, then accept the charge, and all of that. Anyway, it's a trick from when I was a kid.
Okay.
This reminded me of that. Jovan, you keep saying if Austin Reaves continues to play this way.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like I've been paying attention to the chat, and I feel like, we all kind of defended Austin, but it seems to stick to me the most in terms of like that I'm this Austin defender and that I'm the one like making excuses for him. I mean, I'm saying if he continues to play this way against like OKC, yes, that's the ultimate test. That is the ultimate barometer measuring stick team that is the best defense in the NBA. And again, the Lakers are going to have to go through them at some point in the season. And then if he plays like this in the playoffs again, like, I mean, yeah, I think those are that specific matchup is really important because again, that's the standard for every team, not just the Lakers, but can you beat OKC? If you're an East team, can you get to the finals and beat OKC? If you're a West team, can you face them at some point in the playoffs and go through them and beat them? So yes, like that is like a subcategory of how I'm going to view Austin. Then the other one is like just in general, how does he perform in the playoffs? Because if he performs great in the regular season and then lays an egg in the playoffs or drops to a certain level, that will have some concern or that, that will cause some questions as to the long-term viability of Luka and Austin. The one thing I've continued to say though, is regardless of, let's just say he tails off the rest of the regular season, not the same player, or continues to struggle against OKC, struggles in the playoffs. The most shrewd and prudent way to go about this would still be to re-sign him and then flip him next summer. Maybe there's a sign and trade that makes some sense, but next season. So I think you still have to retain Austin as the asset. And even if you try to flip him ahead of the deadline, because of the contract situation, both the number and him being an impending free agent, you are not going to maximize the value of flipping Austin. He is much more valuable. So look at what we just saw with Desmond Bane. They were able to get all those picks because Desmond Bane was signed to a multi-year deal. If you get Austin next summer re-signed, then you flip him in 2026, 27. That's how you maximize that asset.
100%. Yeah, I mean, we're hearing all of Austin's, singing the praises of LA and how he wants to be a Laker and a Laker for life and all that kind of stuff. Those assurances don't exist if you're another team, and so actually having him on the contract is important. Versus if you go trade for him right now and you're Orlando, let's just throw a team name out there, and you trade for him right now, there's no guarantee he stays with you this next summer, and that's something teams would have to factor in when they're figuring out what kind of value they'd be willing to give up for him. Samir said, "Hey guys, big fan. What roster changes do you think are absolutely necessary for the Lakers to be competitive with the Thunder?"
I still think you got to have a five that is perfectly complementary, and so I keep coming down to getting a true starting caliber, like above average starter at the three. If that's what gives you the lineup where it's like I've got Luka, who's a bona fide top tier superstar. I've got LeBron and Austin, who are two of the top 20, 25 players in the league. LeBron obviously top 10, top 15 player in the league. You've got your starting center in DeAndre Aton. The three spot, we've had so many debates on this show over flawed players that are playing that position. And as soon as you put Rui there next to LeBron, there's a certain perimeter speed and perimeter defense element that you lose. And so ultimately so for instance, let's say they get a Herb Jones. Let's say they make that deal. You make a Rui Hachimura plus first round pick plus whatever other salary they need to match Herb Jones contract. If you get that lineup, you address some athleticism concerns, you address some perimeter defense concerns. Herb Jones is a guy that I think could play offensively in that 5-man lineup. Like, that's where I start to look at them as a team that has fewer weaknesses in their best lineup, which I think is that essentially the foundation for them to compete for a championship.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if longer term this is like, depending on what happens with LeBron and does he retire next summer? Does he go elsewhere next summer? Or is he a Laker and maybe he's on a smaller contract? Like, I think it might ultimately be like a multi-piece situation where I don't know if even adding like the perfect 3-and-D player does, like, I mean, one thing I've been steadfast in is like, I think it can get them to a level where they can compete with OKC and maybe it's a 6 or 7 game series, but to like beat OKC or to be on the same level as OKC, I don't know if there's even a player who necessarily does that to this roster. I think OKC is just like, they're a top 5 unit on both sides of the ball. Even Herb Jones, I don't think elevates the Lakers to a top 5 defense. So you're going to still be at a bit of a disadvantage defensively to some extent, just with the current players on this roster. Again, you can like shore it up and improve it, but I don't think Herb Jones takes the Lakers from the 21st defense to the 5th best defense, right? So I think it might be like more of a next offseason question of how do they restructure the roster and which pieces make sense longer term versus kind of just with this group. But I think for now, I think the start is like, if you cannot get that Herb Jones, Jalen Suggs, some sort of perimeter defender that long-term could fit next to Luka and Austin, that's a big step in the right direction. But I do think when we look at like the bench and the overall rotation, I think there's probably a better way to structure this group around Luka and Austin moving forward.
Yeah, and that is going to be a work in progress for the team as we get into next season and all of that. Logan said, "You know what I'm sick and tired of? The overreacting." Well, that's kind of fandom, right? You win, everything's great. You lose, the sky it is indeed falling. Let's go here. Ollie said, "Aaron Nesmith and Ben Mathurin for Rui, Dalton Connect, and the first." Are you making that deal?
Oh, 100% yes. Indiana would not do this.
No.
Yeah, I love Aaron Nesmith. I think he'd be perfect at the 3. I actually would probably rather have him than Herb Jones. I know that sounds crazy, but I think he has like a I've always believed a little bit more in the shorter, trunkier fire hydrant wings than the taller, lankier, kind of skinny wings. And also, I think Aaron Nesmith is a better like ball handler, read and react player than Herb.
Yep.
He's a better offensive player for sure.
Yeah.
Indiana would not offer that to the Lakers. Greenlight says, "Austin is great, but I still don't think together they work. Their best games are when the other one is out. Trading a player is okay." Sure, but to Jovan's point, are you getting the best value for Austin Reaves right now? Probably not, given the contract situation and everything else that's wrapped up in all of that. But I still land at we need to see how the season plays out to figure out whether or not they can work together. The OKC game is an example of them not. There are plenty of other examples of them working together, them having their best games when the other one is out. Is that all that uncommon around the NBA, that if you've got like 2 main guys, that one goes out and the other one takes on a larger burden? To me, that seems like a fairly normal thing to occur.
Yeah, that's just basketball. That's just usage. You're taking on more usage. I mean, statistically, the 2 of them have been great together, and I think that the construct of that's Luka Doncic ball, guys. Luka Doncic ball is Luka runs the show when he's on the floor, and then he hands the reins over when he's off the floor and when he's tired on any singular possession, and that other guy needs to effectively just step in and play Luka ball, which Austin can do. To me, the pairing is fine in that respect.
Quick number for you guys here from Cleaning the Glass. Well, it has dramatically gone down. It was a plus 14 going into last night. But with Luka and Austin on the floor together this season, Lakers are plus 5.4 points per 100 possessions, and they have a 123 offensive rating. So you take either one of those numbers, but it was a plus 13 before the OKC game.
Yeah, that game. That game is going to skew their numbers for a little bit here. Kevin said LeBron needs to become the 2013. We keep going younger with each comment. Next thing you know, it's going to be the 2007 version of LeBron James. We're going to be getting high school LeBron before we know it. The 2013 version of himself second in Defensive Player of the Year defensively, and 2018 version of himself offensively that will cook every mismatch in order to save this team. So now we are like Frankensteining multiple LeBrons together into this one super LeBron, and that's what it is that the Lakers need. It sounds like a great
now
movie.
We can beat OKC.
I mean, that player would help against OKC for sure.
Give me the dude who was defending the way he was defending in the second half of last season, and I think they're going to be a real team to deal with.
You know, it's funny is I still have a lot of people who jump to LeBron is not going to help the Lakers defense, and it's like we're repressing what he did defensively last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be completely honest, I think that's been arguably the worst part of the Lakers defense has been their help and backside rotations, and I think that's an area that LeBron has excelled in for 20 years.
He'll have some stinkers. We'll watch a game this year where
will.
LeBron will mail it in and help side defense because we know he can do that in a regular season game, and everyone will cling.
He probably
to that.
would have mailed it in the Atlanta game.
Yeah, exactly. Let's put it that way. I don't think LeBron would have been the guy digging them out of the Atlanta hole. But yeah, I think when he's locked in and engaged, he's going to be a huge addition to the defense.
All right, let's go here. Patrick said, what do y'all think about Reaves for Toppin and one of the Pacers' athletic guards? I think Austin is legit, but he's a counter move player. We need athletic attacking players.
I think I would do Austin if I was getting back Nesmith and Nembhard, but that's it. Because then I could talk myself into Nesmith being the 3-and-D guy and Nembhard being that secondary ball handler. But I don't think getting back Toppin and just one of the other guards that's not Toppin's not good enough to justify any of the Pacers guards by themselves, in my opinion.
Agreed, and I'm more of a fan of if I'm, and again we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but if I'm flipping Austin, I would ideally even like to flip Austin and a first or Austin and Root, package something together, to get something clearly better rather than split Austin into multiple pieces. I think there are some exceptions where if it's Nesmith and Nembhard or maybe Herb Jones and Trey Murphy is another example that team fans have thrown out that, okay, that one piques my interest, but I think it has to be two clear starting players. For me, I think Toppin's a really good bench big. I don't think he's a clear starter, and especially with a Luka team, I think there are some defensive concerns there.
All right, let's go here. We got a couple more. Easy Peasy said, would you swap Dalton and Gabe for Dennis if the Kings rebuild? Pesky defender, much better offensively than Gabe. My biggest concern there is simply opportunity cost, because you can only trade Gabe's expiring contract once. Is Dennis Schroeder the guy that is going to move the needle for you and get you where you want to go? Or are you better off, say, packaging Gabe and Maxey and the pick and connect and going after that high level wing that you need? Does doing this then stop you from being able to get the wing player that we've all talked about because now you don't have Gabe's expire? I think that's really the math on this, more so than is it worth it to put together Dalton Connect and Gabe Vincent and turn it into Dennis Schroeder?
Exactly. I like Dennis. I will defend Dennis to the end. He's one of my favorite players that I've rooted for. I just think he's a competitive MFer, and I think he's really good at some specific things. I think there were cases to be made in recent years where man, I wish I would have had Dennis instead of Gabe, which was a decision the front office made to let him walk, to go after Gabe instead. But I don't think Dennis does much for this version of the Lakers.
I think in a vacuum, it makes sense. But if we are looking at the bigger picture, as you guys have both said, if I exhausted all avenues and there just was not a feasible wing upgrade for LA to make with some combination of Gabe, Dalton, and Maxey, then sure, you could talk me into this of just being, I'd rather have Dennis on the team than Gabe if I'm the Lakers. But assuming the opportunity cost of that prevents you from potentially packaging these salaries for a starting level wing or even just a bench wing upgrade, I would prefer that route.
All right, and let's get into the final question. Oh, no, we got another one. All right, we'll go. By the way, everybody, make sure you do check out the Lakers Collective on the podcast feed as well. Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure everybody checks that out. Notorious Media said, would a move for Lauri Markkanen move the needle for the Lakers, in your opinion, including Rui in that trade package as well. A lot of money left on Lowry's deal, so you got to be pretty convinced that he's the guy that you want on this team. And I guess really it comes down to, how are you getting him? Are you getting him in a non-Austin deal? And then even getting there financially gets a little tricky. But contracts aside, what do you guys think about Lowry as a potential target for the Lakers?
He also plays the 4. Like, again, you got to look at this through the lens that LeBron's probably going to be here, certainly all of this year and probably next year too. Like, he's probably got 2 years left, right? So, like, if that's the case, making any sort of move for a 4 just continues to round out that redundancy problem that we were talking about earlier. I think if you're moving Rui, it needs to be for a guy that is like a shoe-in starter next to LeBron at the 3.
Agreed. I think this could be a player that, like, longer term, you look at as a potential fit next to Luka, and maybe if the Austin pairing doesn't work out once you re-sign him, then the salary matching's a bit easier, and it's probably Austin plus another player. I think to Trevor's point, salary wise, I mean, he's making $46.4 million this year. It's really tough for the Lakers to get into that price point, and based on some of the offers that have been reported in terms of what Utah has turned down, I have a hard time seeing them accepting. Let's just say, like, the money doesn't even really work here, but let's just say it was Rui, Gabe, Maxey, Dalton, and a first, which is throwing all the pick swaps. But again, Utah is going to be probably tanking for the next few years or so, or kind of rebuilding. Is that you're going to accept that based on some of the offers you've already turned down from, like, Golden State and some other places? So I don't think the Lakers have enough unless they're putting Austin in, but I don't think that would make sense until next season.
Mama mentality on the same topic. So think about it: Luka, Smart, Braun, Lowry, Ayton.
That doesn't really move me.
It's Braun at the 3 is part of the problem there.
Yeah, I think you're too slow 2 through 5 there.
I was not expecting this question. A little different. Patrick said, who's the greatest guitarist of all time? I'm saying Jimmy or Stevie Ray Vaughan. Big fan of you guys. Let's not forget Eddie Van Halen. We got to throw him in there too. But I don't know if you guys have a particular opinion on this.
I love this question, Patrick. I love the Stevie Ray Vaughan shout out. My dad, so my dad grew up in Texas, and he grew up originally in Detroit and then moved to Texas as a young adult. And that's where him and my mom met. And they actually found Stevie Ray Vaughan before he got famous at, like, a dive bar. And they started to, like, go see him at the dive bar when he would perform a few times. And they were, like, following him around in Texas before he ultimately got too famous and they were unable to follow him around anymore. But I'm a big Stevie Ray Vaughan guy. But I think John Mayer is the greatest guitarist who's ever played. I think he's combined a bunch of elements from the guys who came before him. I'm a big believer that things get better over time, not worse. And I think he just has learned from all the greats who came before him and added his own flair and style. I think he's shown the ability to play a bunch of different genres. I think I lean towards John. But I love Stevie. I love Jimmy. I love Dwayne Allman, Derek Trucks, Jerry Garcia is a big one for me too. But you got a nice little list there yourself, Patrick.
Jovan, opinion on guitars?
I'm not a big rock or I'm more of a hip hop rap guy, so I will co-sign what Jason said.
All right, let's go here. If the team,
I do like John Mayer. I will say I do like John Mayer.
Okay,
good answer. Right.
There you go. I would not have thought of John Mayer, so now I'm gonna have to go check out his stuff a little bit more, because I would not have thought, as a more of an old school rock guy, John Mayer is not a guy that would have come to mind for me. So I'm definitely going to have to go give him another listen. If the team keeps winning, the front office likely doesn't feel the need to make a big move because they can't wait until the summer. Because they can wait until the summer once they know what's happening with LeBron. If they do, though, probably expiring guys and Dalton connect. You could twist that either way. Like, if the team keeps winning, the front office can say, oh, we don't need to do anything. Or they keep winning and they go, oh, we need to give this team an extra boost. And you can go the other way too if they happen to lose. So just depending on how you want to, what perspective you want to look at it from, I don't think it necessarily changes. They can go either direction with things. But as far as the main package for the Lakers, it's kind of like, what was it a few years ago? It was like THT and draft capital, and if you don't like Talen Horton-Tucker, then we're out of luck, and that's the main package the Lakers can offer. It's the expiring guys, Dalton Connect. That's the primary package that the Lakers have to offer right now.
Yeah, I think the real question is whether or not they attach draft compensation, and I think that comes down because I think even if the team, I lean towards you're more aggressive if you're better. Like you go for it. I'm generally of the opinion that you go for it if you can, especially since LeBron James is an All NBA level player who won't be here in the future. If the team is somewhere around the 4, 5, 6 seed when you get to February, I think that's where you look at like second round pick, a swap, potentially expiring contracts, roster balancing type of trades. Whereas if you get to February and you're the 2 or the 3 seed, and you have a couple of really good showings against great teams around the league, and LeBron looks awesome, I think that's where it's like, okay, are we attaching a first to Rui, and are we going after a Herb Jones or something like that?
I think it depends just what's out there, right? So I think there's like the tier 1 of assets, which is the 2 expirings in Gabe and Maxey, Dalton, and probably the second. I think they'd be willing to move the second for, especially if it's like a bench upgrade or something. Then the tier 2 is I think Rui, who still is extension eligible through June 30th, so could be an extension candidate for this group and maybe is a starting forward of the future for them. And then obviously the first round pick. Pick swaps are maybe in that, like, depending on the pick swap and the situation, could be tier 1, could be tier 2. But I think you only tap into those tier 2 assets if it is a piece that is makes sense longer term, and it probably does require them feeling like they can go for it. Because going back to starting from the Russ trade, this team has only traded a first round pick in 2 instances, getting out of the Russ business and the Luka trade. So this has been a group that has been pretty cautious and conservative in terms of moving draft capital. And again, the 2 exceptions have been they had to use one to get out of Russ, and obviously for Luka, they underpaid for Luka, so it was a no-brainer to trade it. So I think it is going to still be a high bar for them to move that first.
They paid a first to get into the Russ business, and then paid a first to get out of it. That hurts. That definitely hurt. Okay. Mob Mentality, following up on his previous comment, said we're kind of slow now. Luka, LeBron, Rui, fam. But you don't want to.
Let's go the other direction.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, we did it, guys. We made it. This is the longest show on record so far. We appreciate everybody for joining us. Once again, please make sure if you have not done so yet, you do subscribe to the channel. Jovan, Jason, I've been looking forward to today. I was hoping it was going to be in better circumstances with the Lakers upset win, but still truly enjoyed this conversation with you guys.
It was good to see you guys.
Sir.
I'm looking forward to next week. Hopefully we'll get a little win streak before then.
Absolutely. Let's get some win, and hopefully, fingers crossed, before our next show, maybe LeBron James will be back in action. That would be nice. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining. Till next time. See ya, and stay safe.